Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Torah. Shalom and shalom to everyone. We'd like to invite you and thank you so much for visiting us as we are about to go into our Torah study session. So we invite you to grab your scriptures and to, read along with us. Now, we have already read through the material or the Torah, and so I will call out to you so that you know where we are and when we're there. So we're going to start in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and then we will leave from chapter 5 and go to Zechariah. But when we get there. So if you will open up with us to 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and we will begin our discussion there. So Corinthians chapter 5 basically is going into a letter, the whole Corinthians book, first and second, are letters to the group that was formed in Corinth. And as we stated on last week and the week before, looking at the time period, this is Shaul sending a letter to a group that had been with him he spent about 18 months there and teaching. Lost the signal. He spent 18 months there. Is it still? Are we still live?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So he spent 18 months there, and at this point, he's getting reports back on different things that are going on among them. And one of the things that he's raising now is the moral judgment of this group. And he's raising points on some of the things that he's picking up on. So let me just kind of bring some of the verses in. So chapter 5, verse 4. In the name of our Master, Yeshua Messiah, when you are gathered together, and my spirit, with the power of our Master Yeshua Messiah, deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master. Your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Pesach, or Passover, was slaughtered for us. So then, let us celebrate the festival not with leaven, old leaven, nor with the leaven of evil or wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. So right here, what we are looking at, which is the nucleus of the issue that he's writing at this time, where they are having a problem with morality. And in the first verse, it talks about a man picking up his mother's or his father's wife. And so looking at the different things that he's bringing up, he's saying that that type of person, or that person, basically, I've already judged. So he's already gotten word on this person. And so he says, this person I've already judged, even in my absence from being there. Just knowing what happened, knowing that this is against Torah. In other words, Shaul, many people would say Shaul, he didn't teach Torah, but he taught us against Torah. We're no longer under the law. Galatians chapter 3. Many people erroneously teach this, that Shaul or Paul was he was not a man of the Torah, but he would tell you, I am a Hebrew of Hebrews. He is a man of the Torah. And so right here, he is using Torah to judge a person or to bring a man up on charges. And this is also where when he says, do you know that you will also judge nations? And it's not that you will be sitting on the judge's bench to judge nations, judge messengers or angels. It's that through your actions of walking by Torah, it went out again. Walking by Torah, if you walk by Torah while others who are walking outside of Torah, your obedience to the Torah condemns those who are walking outside of the Torah. That's what he's saying. That's what he's talking about. So let's look at this example again. Verse 7, chapter 5, 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump. So that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. So if you're righteous, he's saying you have gotten the leaven out. You are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Passover, was slaughtered for us. So he's bringing in a very key point here, where he's bringing in Leviticus chapter 23, speaking concerning the feast days and the correlation as to when do we have a celebration of unleavened bread, which is during Passover. And so he's relating us to the bread of life, which is Yeshua, who is also our Passover slaughtering, or our sacrificial lamb. So he's comparing us to, if we walk righteously, we can then sit as judges of those who are unrighteous. Once again, not that we have to go and say, you're unrighteous, you're unrighteous, you're unrighteous by our own standard. He's saying, as we walk according to the Torah, you are no longer leavened. So he's making a point of out the old leaven. Now, going back to the person who had this immoral act of taking his father's wife, the Torah tells us that we shall not uncover our father's wife, for she is your mother. So if it is his father, then how do we justify taking his wife? Let's go hypothetical. What if it is his next wife? Let's say this is not your mother, but it is his wife. So by him being your father, the scripture still tells us you do not uncover your father's wife. Now, whether she is your mother, this is all in the Torah. Whether she is your mother or your stepmother, you do not uncover your father's wife. So that is Torah. So anyone who says that Paul or Shaul was not keeping Torah, that's Torah right there. Go ahead.
And then, let's see, down here in 5 and 10, where it says, I certainly did not mean with those of the world. Because he's like, I'm writing to you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
This is not happening in the world. This is happening in the so-called assembly.
Right.
So these people those people out there, they're not pretending to be righteous and holy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I'm talking to the people that's right in here and that's in the assembly that's doing this.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really, important piece to get, that when we look at and hear people, in the different assemblies, wherever, whether anybody who is reading the scripture or supposedly living it,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't realize that all of the prophets, all of the apostles, the disciples, they were talking to people who were claiming to be holy or claiming to be righteous. The prophets didn't go and speak to ungodly people. They didn't belong to Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
They were he was talking to the so-called righteous people. Messiah did the same thing.
I think the verse 5, it brings in something questionable. Um, it says, deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua. So I would anticipate that this would be probably a degree of difficulty, or with a degree of difficulty. What is he actually saying here? What does he mean that, I indeed uh, will deliver such a one to Satan? Um, First of all, we know that it is Satan who have deceived this person, because he's writing, again, as you said already, he's writing to the Hebrews, those who have come in from idolatry and everything else. And so, as he's saying, deliver such a one to Satan, he's saying, for those of us who are walking righteously, deliver that one to Satan. And so, why is he saying that? He's saying because in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua. So, in other words, if you, as a righteous one, point to this person his wrong and let it be known that this is what you're doing. Now, it's up to you. You choose to walk in uncleanness, you choose to stay in this way of unrighteousness, then there is a penalty. There is a Torah against it. So, of course, at this point, then that is domain of Hasatan, because that's where he wants us to be. So you point that out to him, that this is unclean, not righteous, and you allow that person to make up their mind as to what they want to do. But if you don't bring this up, you don't point it out that it's unclean, unrighteous, then, he might have an excuse to say, well, no one corrected me, no one told me. And, if this is someone who's not aware keenly of Torah lifestyle, then he may have an argument. But, as he says, deliver that one up to Hasatan for destruction of the flesh, so that his flesh is then brought back into subjection under the Torah, so that he may walk according to the Torah, so that when the Master himself comes, that he would be saved during that time, rather than never getting the word of correction, and then the Master also comes and destroys him because of his walk. Yes, Travis.
And that's what's spoken of in Ezekiel 16.
Yes.
O son of man, if you see a righteous man fall in unrighteousness,
Restore.
and you do not say to him, unrighteousness, then yeah, you will die in a sin, but the blood is accounted to your hands.
Exactly. Yes.
Doesn't mean that if my brother is doing something evil and I know that what he is doing is evil, I have to confront him.
Yes.
So if I don't do that, that means I'm also.
You're also at fault. That we don't get to be innocent by, we're not an innocent bystander, because now the sin has been made known to us. We are obligated by the Torah to tell them, you're walking wrong.
Let's do another easy example. Let's say a person is stealing, and this is your brother. He's stealing. It's, it's for fun. It's for, to see if I can get away with it. You are obligated to tell him that's against righteousness, against the scriptures. The scripture tells us, you shall not steal. That's all you're obligated to do. You're not obligated to follow that person or your brother around to make sure they don't steal. But because you are a person of light, you have to share your light. That's all it's saying. Share your light. You shall not steal. It is a commandment. And then you allow that person to make that choice. If they continue to walk in it, you have warned them, you have told them, but judgment is on them, not you and them. Because if it's a person who is stealing and they never knew, they've never been to a Bible study, they never heard of the word of correction, they never heard righteousness, and you don't share with them, you're not sharing your light. But the moment you share your light with them, you're telling them this is against God, this is against His principles, and there is judgment. Then you have freed yourself.
Right.
That's the requirement.
Yeah, I think the bottom line to the whole thing is we don't get to sit around and just act like, well, he's doing it, so that don't have anything to do with me. So this is where, I believe that the Torah understanding of the laws of relativity come in. Everything is relative to everything. I'm responsible. And too many times you hear people say, well, he ain't doing it to me, so I'm not going to have anything to say about it. Or I'm not getting involved in that. But that makes you, if you are standing by and you see an injustice, you are just as much a part of the problem as that person doing the injustice. Because you're not speaking out. Father Yahweh says, and He said it in Isaiah, cry aloud, spare not, tell my people of their transgression. He tells us to cry aloud. And it from a Torah standpoint, prophet standpoint, and now we read it here in 1 Corinthians, it's our fault if it continues and we just don't say anything. We don't know how we can help someone. Because sometimes all a person needs is a word from us to say, what you're doing is wrong. And it might turn them. We just don't know. The power that's in our mouths to be able to turn somebody to a righteous path. But if we never open up and say it, and it can be a little intimidating, especially if we feel some kind of way about saying something to somebody because maybe what position they're in or who they are to us, and we don't want to, we don't want to mess up our relationship with them, or we may be afraid. It could be a person who is in authority over you, and you feel, intimidated or afraid to tell them, to say it. But according to the scripture, that's what we're called to do it. And we allow trust Father Yahweh to us to be able to walk that righteous path, because it's not easy.
So for instance, even if like my workplace like this, and my boss is doing something that I know is out of line, I'm supposed to inform him that what he's doing is out of line.
Now, concerning your boss, this is someone who is not a relative, number one, but it is your workplace. Here, if he sees you as a righteous person, you are as a righteous person. If you see that he is stealing, you the same way. You would make known, okay, to steal is not righteous. But I think in the next chapter we'll see it. But it is not your place because now he is your authority because he is, your employer.
Mm-hmm.
And as your employer,
He should know better.
it is it is his responsibility to behave in such a manner that is correct before you as his employee. But if he is doing something that you know is incorrect, you can find a way to, make the correction and say, oh, that's not godly, that's not righteous, that's not,
Or ask him, is that
Yeah,
righteous? Is that godly? And not be disrespectful.
right,
I see.
right. And it's no respecter of person, so you don't want to, behave in such a way that, oh, because he's my boss, he
I
can
can't say
do
anything.
things, that's not righteous, in front of you. Now, here's the other thing. Shaul's saying, I'm talking to my Hebrew brothers.
Yeah.
Now, it depends on if he is a person who is not trying to walk righteously, but if he's Christian, in other words, if he's Christian belief, you can still call him into subjection to the scriptures.
So does the Bible tell us to do that?
So
Yeah.
there's always a way to do it.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be respectful because
Right.
it is a person of your authority.
Right.
Just as mom and dad, if mom and dad was doing something incorrect, you can't, go thumping them upside the head. God said them because that's your authority in the house. It's your mother, it's your father. Some in some respects, we have to balance it out. Know when to speak, when to speak without words. One way to speak without words is in walking it out before them. And then when an opportunity for a word, you have shown by your walk, then now by your talk, convicting that by saying, well, I don't steal because I know it's not correct to steal. I'm just using that as an example. And so, even though it's written, you shall not steal, but I already know that it's not a righteous thing, So you call a person into subjection to what they say they are. He's not a Hebrew, but he's probably a Christian.
And I was just thinking, there's always a way to figure out how to say it that will not sound, number one, disrespectful, and or displeasing. Um, that because I had a supervisor one time who was doing shady things. And he was treating a coworker, just talking to her really bad, and she was real nervous, and he would just talk to her, just yell at her and talk to her really bad. And we were in a meeting, and I told him he was wrong. The woman wasn't in there at the time, but it was during my performance evaluation, and I know he didn't appreciate it because I could see the look on. I said, but that's not fair. I said, she's very intimidated by you, and you shouldn't talk to her like that. I said, we're grown people. We're adults. I said, you shouldn't speak to another adult. She's not your child. I said, that's not. But even saying that, and I said, respectfully, he accepted it and just, went on. But even with that, maybe if you put it in a way of like, boss, I pray for you that you will always do the right thing. That'll get a person thinking, wow, he's praying for me, that I will do the right thing, and I don't always do the right thing. I'm doing some shady stuff, Father. But this young man, my worker, says that he's praying for me. Boss, I always pray for you, and I pray that you're a good man to me, and I pray that you will always do the right thing. You see how that could be, how a person could be like, wow, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And even if it doesn't make him feel that way, I think Father will bring it to his remembrance. But that maybe is a way, because he has been good to you, right? Yes. So you would be telling him, I pray for you because you've been good to me. And I pray that you will always do the right thing. It gives a person an opportunity to straighten
Correct.
up and correct their ways.
And the other one too is, what about these Christian leaders? They for example, that one in the Bible that they say we shouldn't bow to anything. And yes, they'll read it in the church, and yes, they'll go and bow down to no Mary and whatever. So, me being the follower that right now I'm no longer under them, can I go and convert them that? Yeah, can I do that? Or
If you feel led to do that, you can. There's nothing to prevent you from doing that.
and if I don't do that, am I going to be held responsible for that? Or
For all of them.
You're not responsible for someone's idolatrous behavior. They understand the scriptures far as you shall have no other gods before me. They understand that. It's not like they don't know. But if you feel led to go back and have a conversation, then the Spirit is leading you to do that, then that's what you do. But you're not responsible for their actions. I mean, just think about all of the different denominations that we come out of. You leave a certain teaching because you make a choice whether to continue with that teaching or not. And if you see where there is something against the Torah or the law, then that's where you sit down and say, I would like to sit down with you. Let me show you, let me show you where I'm at these days. And you talk about it and you show, well, this is what you do, this is what I choose to do. And so I see that against scriptures. And, for me, I choose not to bow down to any idol, statue, man-made relica or replica of anything, because that's idolatry. And you leave it right there.
Because we can't go to every pastor that we see on the church. I mean, we see it all the time. We were in an organization full of idolatry and just bad practices. And how we did it, my father and several others of our upline approached, that ecclesiastical body and told them of their wrong, and then even took them to court. But what we did was we just didn't, we stopped attending their ministry and told them that how you're living is wrong. What you're doing is wrong to the people. You are not living righteous lives. But we couldn't go to all of them. You know what I'm saying? We just walked up right before them, and if they came and said something to us, which one did, and we told them, because this is not righteous, because this organization is not doing what is godly. This is unrighteous behavior. So it's only for those who you can touch and can reach, because, look at the number of people that's on televangelist,
Right.
people on television. But am I called to, contact TD Jakes and say, man, what you doing? If I feel like something he has taught is wrong. That if I'm not there, if I get the opportunity and the Holy Spirit speaks and says, you need to go ahead and tell him, then that's when we're supposed to take that opportunity, because we don't know who we can turn. But if it's a pastor, someone who you have a relationship with. Now, our son is a whole group of them that came out of college together. And he said that they will have their, like a Bible study. And every opportunity he gets to put it out there, because they're all like Christian pastors and preachers and whatever now have moved into their ministries and stuff, and he will tell them. So I think this is more along the lines of those who's right there, who is around you, who you can touch, and that if you see them walking wrong or doing something, then you have the right to say, brother, that's against Yahweh.
And another approach is sometimes you have relationships with individuals within the congregation, and for those people, they may wonder why you left or went a different way. Let's sit down, let's talk, and I've done that plenty of times where I've talked with people who I went to church with, part of a music group or whatever, ministerial group. Talk with them and let them know. And the ones that I can get to, I get to. The ones I can't, I keep going. Right. So, if you know people that's part of that ministry that you have a relationship with, or you can have a relationship with, that's who you go to, as well as the pastor or whatever opportunity presents you. So it's at this point, you'll walk before them because they know you, they're looking at you. Now you'll walk, and when the opportunity comes, now to talk. But you can't always get back to where you have come from. Look at Abraham, which is an example. He had to leave his family. That's what Yahweh told him. Leave your family, your kindred, and go where I will show you. But it wasn't until much years and years and years later when he talked to his father. So, not that he broke relationship. His father didn't come into the Hebrew lifestyle until years later, before he died. And so Abraham was responsible for that. But was he responsible to go back and try to convert all of those people? No. Yahweh didn't charge him with that. He said, leave them. So he left them. And when the opportunity came, then he was able to, redeem himself. But that was much later. Let's go to Zechariah. You have anything else? Are you good? All right, Zechariah chapter 7. And again, for those of you who are viewing online, please go back and read these chapters so that you have, you know, everything far as details and subject matter. I try to bring in as we skim through. So Zechariah chapter 7, I'm going to start at verse 1 so that we can kind of look at the subject matter. And in the 4th year of sovereign Darius, it came to be that the word of Yahweh came to Zechariah on the 4th of the 9th new month, or Kislev. Now Bethuel had sent to Shar Esther with Rahim Melech and his men to pray before Yahweh, speaking to the priests who belonged to the house of Yahweh of hosts, and to the prophets, saying, should I weep in the 5th new moon and fast as I have for so many years? Then the word of Yahweh of hosts came to me, saying, speak to all the people of the land and to the priests, saying, when you fast and lament in the 5th and the 7th month, all these 70 years, did you truly fast for me? For me? And when you ate and when you drank, was it not for those eating and for those drinking? Are these not the words which Yahweh proclaimed that the former prophets, when Jerusalem and the cities around it were inhabited and in safety, and the south of the lowland were inhabited? And the word of Yahweh came to Zechariah, saying, thus said Yahweh of hosts, execute truth, right ruling, show loving commitment and compassion, everyone to his brother. Do not oppress the widow and or the fatherless, the stranger or the poor, and do not plot evil in your hearts against one another. But they refuse to listen. Here's the key right here. They refuse to listen, and they shrug their shoulders and stop their ears from hearing, and they made their hearts like flinted against hearing the Torah and the words which Yahweh of hosts had sent by his Spirit through the former prophets. Therefore, great wrath came from Yahweh of hosts, and it came to be as he called, and he did not hear. So let them call, but I shall not hear, said Yahweh of hosts. And I scattered them with a storm wind among all the nations which they had not known. And the land was laid waste behind them. No one passed through or returned, for they had made the pleasant land a waste. So in other words, as I ended up reading the whole thing so we can get the understanding, Yahweh pouring out his judgment on the land for their wrong, their injustice. And so this is what Yahweh is saying. And so this goes back to, Emmanuel, your question. If we see someone doing something outside of Torah, then you speak to that purpose, and you let it know that, judgment will come against you. But as he says here in verse 11 says, but they refuse to listen, and they shrug their shoulders and stop their ears from hearing. So this is what happens also when we go back to a pastor and we tell them, listen, what you're dealing with is idolatry. Anytime you're bowing to a statue, it is idolatry. Yahweh saying, for those who don't desire to walk in righteousness, they shrug their shoulders and stop their ears from hearing. And so you have done what you were commanded to do, show my people they're wrong, but you're not commanded to hold their hands and make sure they walk correctly. And so this is why Yahweh is saying, I'll bring judgment, but if you have warned them, then you have saved yourself. But if you have not warned them, then judgment is on you and them, because you saw clearly that they were walking wrong and you didn't say anything. But the moment you show them their idolatrous ways, then you're free. Yahweh is not holding you. And I mean, that's perfect. That's right here. Verse 12 says, and they made their hearts like flint against hearing the Torah and the word which Yahweh of hosts had sent by his Spirit through the former prophets. Therefore, great wrath came from Yahweh of hosts. So we have the scriptures, every church, every pastor of every language, every culture have the same opportunity you have to read this. They choose whether or not to obey it or not. You give them a word of warning and they choose not to obey it, then you're not obligated to make sure they walk according to the Torah.
Yeah, that's it.
He will send his wrath, and his wrath will either judge them according to their sin and correct it, or it will judge them according to their sin and destroy them. So it's not, our obligation to make anyone walk this. I have relatives who they know our walk, and I have shared with on both sides how we walk, how we live. It's up to them whether they will hear it or not, and not everyone will hear.
Well, here. That's right.
You have anything you want to bring in? So again, that was perfect. Let me bring out this part that Yahweh says. He says, you fast in the 5th month or even the 7th month.
Right.
For these 70 years. Who did you do that for?
That's right.
Did you do it for you or did you do it for me? If you did it for me, you were doing it, and he mentions the 70 years. Why 70 years? Because that was the judgment. That's how long they were going to be there. So now you want to walk righteously. You want to go on a fast. You want to do what you think is right. Why didn't you do a little bit of that before judgment came?
Right.
But once judgment comes, the judgment is going to stand. And that's what he's saying. Did you fast for me or did you fast for you?
And this Zechariah is a perfect picture of what Father Yahweh says in Isaiah 58, where he says, is this not the fast that I've chosen for you?
Mm-hmm.
To loose the wrongness of those who are oppressed.
Exactly. Beautiful.
To set the captives free.
Mm-hmm.
To all these things. He said, this is what a fast is. To give bread to the hungry.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that's what the fast is for. It's to go out and administer the word of Father Yahweh so that they can live in peace, life, light, provision, because all of those things is what the Torah gives to us. So, man, when I saw this right here, I was like, that's exactly what Isaiah 58 is talking about. What Father says, is this not the fast that I have for you? But it's not supposed to be about pointing a finger and telling somebody I'm righteous, more righteous than you. And like you just said, he's like, oh, so you want to come and ask me about fasting now? What did you fast for? What would you do in 70 years?
Mhm.
Now you gotta come and ask me if I should do the fast.
Anything else here before we move on? All right, let's go to better sheet, Genesis chapter 23 through 25 and 18 is where we end up. All right, so again, for those of you who are sitting in with us, thank you so ever greatly. Thank you for visiting us on our Torah session.
Uh-huh.
Genesis chapter 23 starts out with Sarah's death as she is now age 127, which also gives us the timeline of their son, Yishak, knowing that Yishak was born when she was 90 years of age. So if she is now 127, that puts Yishak at 37. And that is the time when Abraham took him to sacrifice him um, as Yahweh prevented him from doing. But Yishak, a huge story about Yishak is that he is the seed of promise. And so as we start with Sarah here, this is the conjunction or the beginning of seeing how Abraham, Yishak goes through, as last week, chapter 22, with, what it talked about was Isaac being sacrificed. And as Isaac was going to be sacrificed, Yahweh spoke to him from heaven to Abraham and said, don't harm a hair on his head, don't kill him. Abraham had the knife up and on his way down when Yahweh spoke to him to stop him. And as Abraham said, when said, I see the wood, I see all the materials for the sacrifice, the fire, where is the sacrifice? And Abraham said, Yahweh makes for himself a sacrifice. So we're now into the next part of that story where Sarah, as a result of believing that Isaac was sacrificed by Abraham, she then died because, as the scripture tells us, the bond that was between all three of them, really, the bond because Sarah could not have children for 25 years and then have a son born to her husband, and now her husband has been commanded to take his life. And so this is only the story of Yeshua and Yahweh. So we see this come to life where now Sarah is the next casualty in this ongoing story, that we see a picture of man being redeemed by the Father. If we use Yahweh as the Father as he is, because he is our creator, Abraham, our trustworthy companion who is obedient to Yahweh, who then takes us into the recipient of obedience where Adam was disobedient. But Abraham, because of his obedience, now became the receiver of the bloodline of Yeshua. And so Sarah could not die until she gave Abraham an heir that was a bloodline heir from her, between her, Sarah, and Abraham.
Yes.
And both of them, their names being changed and reflecting the bloodline and the historical documentation that we now read about, because it's much later, 3 generations later, 4 generations later, that we see the Torah being given. And that is from Abraham, Isaac, of which we are looking at now, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then the 12 sons. 12 sons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we see Abraham now is requesting a burial site from the Hittites, or Ephron the Hittite, and requesting it in the field of Machpelah, which is verse 9. There is a cave, and in this cave is where he wants to bury his wife. And so there's an important part from this story, which is the price that he paid was a very expensive price, but because of his situation, he didn't mind paying whatever the price was. And they took advantage of that by charging 400 pieces of silver, but it carries a very significant piece of history. Why 400 pieces of silver? Which is verse 16. And Abraham listened to Ephron. This is after now trying to secure the land. And Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named, Ephron named, in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. Thus the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field of the cave which was in it, and all the trees that were in the field, which were within all the surrounding borders, were deeded. Major information here.
Yeah.
Let me go on so you can see the importance here. Keep that deed. Hold on to that. To Abraham as a possession, there it is, in the presence of the sons of Heth, before all who went in at the gate of his city. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre. Thus is Hebron in the land of Canaan. Thus the field and the cave that is in it were deeded to Abraham by the sons of Heth as property for a burial site. Major information. This deed is valid through all the earth. We read about it. It's verified. It was purchased and deeded. So that stands to every generation. Because remember, Yahweh says his land is not to be sold beyond redemption.
Right.
That he will always hold the right to the land. So therefore, as Abraham purchased this land, the field, everything around it, which is in Hebron, which is in Canaan, which is also known as the Promised Land. This is why Yahweh holds the deed, and the promise is to bring his people back to that piece of parcel of land and give it to the generations of children who have grown up outside of that land and who can deny, because in every language, every culture have the opportunity to read that this was purchased for 400 pieces of silver. Why 400? 400 years, your descendants will come back here. So therefore, the land has been marked with a life. Sarah, who is the mother of the redeemed, and now the land. So it has been procured that the land is deeded, the land has blood, the land has livestock, and the land has an owner. And the children of the land will return, and whoever is on the land, they will have to give up. Yahweh has already made provisions, and there will be no turning back for any other people. Any thoughts, any points to be raised?
I think it's important to also say, concerning what happened with Sarah, that we find that in the book of Jasher. I would have to look up the chapter to see where it is, but it speaks of that account of what occurred.
It does, yes.
The book of Jasher, or Yasher would be the proper pronunciation, speaks of that situation
Right.
with Sarah and Ishak.
Yes, it gives us more details of that time and even how she died according to, the events of that time. Again, we know that Ishak was to be sacrificed, and when Sarah was given that information, exactly, he wasn't a little boy. As we read here, she was 127,
37 years old.
which makes him 37 years old. And so we have, scriptural references back up as to, the movies put him as a little defenseless little boy against his father Abraham. That's not the case. Yishak was old enough that if he wanted to fight against his father, he could have, but he chose not to, because he then understood that I am the sacrifice. Tie me tightly, Father, so that I do not defile the sacrifice. And again, back in chapter 22, we see where Yeshua, Yahweh, not my will, but your will be done. We see this story back and forth between Isaac and Abraham, as we also see between Yeshua and Yahweh. All right, chapter 24. Unless there's any other questions. And for those of you who are viewing online, you can always write in any comment or question you may have, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Chapter 24, verse 1. And Abraham was old and advanced in years, and Yahweh had blessed Abraham in every way. And Abraham said to his oldest servant of his house, who ruled over all that he had, please put your hand under my thigh, so that I make you swear by Yahweh, the Elohim of the heavens and the Elohim of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. So looking at this, please make sure you go through and read through. Notice that they are in Canaan. He's sending Eleazar out to find a wife for his son, and he gives very specific information and enters into an oath. Do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites of whom I now dwell. That's very important. But go to my family's land and take a wife for him there. And so he put his hand under his thigh. What is the importance? To put his hand under his thigh is a oath to his generations that you will not take a wife from any other place other than where I tell you, which is from my father's land. So he goes back to where Abraham left home with his family. Nahor takes a wife from the bloodline of Nahor. And then there's Hebron, and Hebron, he has a son and daughter, which is Sarah and Lot. And so we know their story already, so we're moving on to the next generation. So now Nahor has a son by Milcah, a daughter by Milcah, and they have a child, and that child is, well, two, Laban and Rebekah. And so now as they come back to Rebekah to get her, she seems to be the right person, as Eleazar prayed to Yahweh that he would prosper his way by the women who go out and bring water. Let one who I speak to give me water as well as my camels. And so remember, he had 10 camels. And according to your message today, each of the camels had 2 stomachs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was called what? Polygastric. So I thought that was fitting today as well, that you're speaking on the different animals that have 2 stomachs. And we know that the camel, because he is a beast of burden, number one, and he can travel great distances across, go without water across the sands of the desert.
I think those humps too hold water in their the humps on their back.
They do, yes. Yes, they're part of his systematic nutritional area. So,
but of course, the camel is not clean because it doesn't have a split hoof.
Right.
It's like a horse. A horse chews to cut too.
Right. So we can't eat the camel, but notice that he brought 10 camels. Why 10 camels? Well, we have the 10 northern tribes, which are also lost into all of the earth. And all of this is a story of redemption. And he's giving us details by different generations, each of how each generation goes through events of their times. But if you look into it carefully enough, then you see that Yahweh is telling us the end from the very beginning. And so Rivkah ends up being the one that offered water to both Eleazar, his men, as well as their 10 camels. This had to be no small matter, because number one camel with 2 stomachs, then you have the men who were with Eleazar And how many men did he have? Did he have one man per camel? I don't know. But if he did, that's 10 men. So, I mean, this is a major task, but she was shown to have a servant's heart because she said, let me not give you water, your men water, but your camels until they have had enough. Rabbi.
I just wanted to bring chapter 23 in the book of Yasher is where it gives that account.
Okay.
Just to, if anyone's looking at that.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. All right. He put a nose ring in, gave her a bracelet worth 10 shekels again.
All of those were against jewelry.
Yes.
But
So is that a bride price or?
I would say that is not the total bride price, but it was something given that made the family take notice. Because remember, they brought 10 camels loaded with gifts. So that was the bride price because they gave them plenty of material as well as giving her, a lot as well. Garments, clothes, gold, silver. So yes. Yes, all of that was part of the bride price. Any thoughts, any questions there?
And
Why is it that most Abraham, Yahweh asked him to leave his relatives and he's showing him where to go. But when it's time for his son to get married, he went back.
Right.
well, he didn't go back, but he sent his servant back to get someone from his.
Yeah, but
His
I'm asking
family.
why.
Right.
Because if that place is not good for you, Yahweh asks you to live there. And now your child is ready to get married and you are going back to that place to get a wife.
One word. Idolatry. But it wasn't that part of the land that he was talking about. It was in Armenia, Arma, A-R-A-R-A-M, Arma. But this is where he told him, when he told him to leave from his family. So now he was a sojourner into all of these places. True, he was in Hebron and he was in Canaan. But then he told him to leave Hebron later on, when he was 75 years of age. But then to go back there, his bloodline was still there. So that's why he sent back, because to take a wife for my son in Hebron or Canaan, this is where his bloodline and people were still. So any other people, he could not take a wife from the Canaanites.
Right. That's why I sent him back to get a wife from his people, not necessarily from the land. You see what I'm saying? His people were in that place, so he sent him back. And it's all about Emmanuel, inheritance. All about inheritance. Just like it's big here, the inheritor of the land. So certain people will not marry certain people because of the inheritance of land. So that's what it was. It was about Abraham's downline still being a righteous bloodline. So he didn't want him taking a bride from Canaan or that place, but where his people were from, he could get a bride from them because it was about his bloodline, keeping his bloodline intact.
So verse 9 gives us the location. Verse 9, 24 and 9 says, Then the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. The servant took 10 of his master's camels and left. For all his master's good gifts were in his hand. And he arose and went to Aram Naharim, to the city of Nahor. So that's where he went to get a wife. But the place that he lived, which was in Canaan, verse 3 said, So did I make you swear by Yahweh, that the Elohim of the heavens and the Elohim of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I dwell. So he's living in Canaan. He can't take a wife for his son there because of the past. When the flood took place, and I know you will recall me talking about this, the flood took place, everything that went into the ark lived. The one thing that didn't go into the ark was the fish. And remember, when Yeshua, we see this much later on, when Yeshua sent the demons out of the man who had legion of demons, they went into the pigs. The pigs went into the water. What was in the water? Fish, evil spirits. So these spirits came back through that period of time, and therefore the Canaanite daughters could not bring the bloodline of Yahweh or Yeshua into the earth. It has been defiled because the messengers came down and began to take the daughters of the Canaanites. This is why he promised and said, put your hand under my thigh. So it was an oath that he could not take a wife from the Canaanites, but leave here and go to my parents' homeland. So Aram Naharim, that's where they went. The rest of 24 is sharing the events of that time, which ended in result of the daughter leaving and going. Now, imagine this coming. Imagine this.
I'm going back to something you were saying earlier.
Okay. Your young daughter is about to leave and go with a man we've never seen before. To a relative's house, yes. But we don't know this servant. We don't know this man. And we're going to send our daughter along with him. But they knew that this was from Yahweh because of his testimony. And his testimony was that to the woman who says, not only to you did I give this water, but to you, your servants, and your camels. That for them was proof positive that this was from Yahweh, and they had no reservation. They just said, let us stay with us for 10 more days. He said, don't delay me, for Yahweh has prospered my way. Let me go back to my master. Travis.
Back to 24:10. That,
Yes.
see, Nahor was one of the brothers of Abraham.
Right. That's the brother who survived. But yes, this was now a city.
So it was Haran, Nahor, and Abram.
Right.
3 brothers. So this city would have been the city that he
Right.
was
He founded.
Yeah.
Anything else? So towards the end of the chapter, after verse 50, it says that Rivkah saw Yishak coming. He was in the field, and she saw a man coming towards them, inquired, and Eleazar said, "That is my master, Yishak." She discarded or dismounted from her camel and veiled her face. And so she was preparing herself for her husband. And so as she now desired to walk, Yishak also recognized them coming and went to meet them. And so at this point, this is the first time she met and would have met her husband to be. And so from this point, there is a grand introduction by Eleazar and the giftings. And so at this point, he then accepts her as wife. But we know that he doesn't consummate the marriage right away, because the scripture says that he was 40 years old and he took his wife into his mother's tent and was comforted. And so that's 3 years.
But she was only like 8 or 10 years old,
10.
something like that. She was 10.
10.
So 13.
Right. So as we know that she was a young lady when they came together at the age of
13.
10 and
Oh,
40. Well, when they met, he was 37.
yeah.
But he went away to be educated in the Torah, came back, and we know that the Torah picks up on it and says he was now 40 years old, and therefore being 30 years older, she is 13 by the time he takes her into his mother's tent.
No, that's just,
And
that's hard to hear.
and again, this was ordained by Yahweh even when they left. But the point here is that she had to be a woman who had not known man. And we know that they married very early in those days.
But we wouldn't
And
want our daughter to marry at 13 years old.
we know that they married very early during those days. And, I know even during our parents' generation, they married much younger than they do today. It's because of all of the laws and requirements for marriage. It pushed back the age because a person has to become ready for marriage. So,
And mature.
yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions
Mature
in chapter 24?
enough.
If not, then we'll move on to chapter 25. Chapter 25, I'm going to start,
It's a genealogy.
yes, I'm going to start at verse 9. And his son Yishak and Ishmael buried him in, let me go back one verse, verse 7, 2 verses. And these are the years of Abraham's life, which he lived 175 years. And Abraham breathed his last and died in good old age, aged and satisfied, and was gathered to his people. And his son Yishak and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zor, the Hittite, the field which Abraham purchased from the sons of Heth. There Abraham was buried with Sarah, his wife. And it came to be after the death of Abraham that Elohim blessed his son Yishak and Yishak dwelt in Laharoth, and this is the genealogy of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar, the Mizraim, Sarah's female servant, bore to him. And it goes on to more genealogy. So I encourage you to continue to read throughout these chapters and, fully understand all of the details. But the important part here is that Abraham died during chapter 25 at the age of 175 years. Now, Yishak is the son of promise through Sarah. Now Abraham can die and be gathered to his fathers. And so, as he now has an heir, which is Yishak, then Yishak will give birth to Yaakov, and Yaakov will give birth to the 12 sons. And that's pretty much how it goes through 4 generations of Hebrews. Abraham is a Hebrew, but he is not from either of the tribes. He is the father of those tribes, which are 12. And with that being said, Yishak, which is next in line, then Yaakov, and then the sons, and the blessings that Abraham prayed all the way through Yishak, Yaakov, Yahweh once again providing a way of redemption through the bloodline of Father Abraham. That's why the scripture says, look to your father Abraham. And so if we follow the history of Abraham, we see how he was obedient, and that went down through 42 generations according to Matthew chapter 1, and I think that's verse 17. I'll read it really quick so that we can see Yahweh's plan is not happenstance. It's not just something thrown together. It was planned and executed. Matthew chapter 1, verse, I'm going to start at verse 16. And Yaakov brought forth Joseph, the husband of Miriam, of whom was born Yeshua, who is called Messiah. So all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations, and from David until the exile of Babel were 14 generations. And from the exile to Babel until Messiah were 14 generations. If you add up those 3 14s, that give you 42 generations where Yahweh tracked it out. And why would he pick Abraham and not Adam? In the book of Luke, it gives us, it starts from Adam. But in the book of Matthew, it starts at Abraham. And the reason it starts at Abraham rather than Adam is that we recognize that here is the lineage of obedience from Abraham on up to Yeshua. Not Adam, whereas Adam was disobedient, but not that he has been excluded from the promise or redemption, is that we recognize between the two where the redemption started was in the 20th generation of Abraham, and it worked its way all the way to the 42nd generation of Yeshua, and he gives us those generations named throughout the different books, starting with Corinthians, Kings, Corinthians, Matthew, and I think some other book that may give genealogy on the Brit as well. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Anything?
You said kings. Did you mean?
Yeah, Kings. Kings gives us the lineage of kings.
Right.
Yeshua would be one of the kings, in that David now is named in this book of genealogy from David to Yeshua. So I use the book of Kings because it also verifies that starting with David, there's no other king that, even though there's a line of kings, but it starts, and it have to start with David. Why David? Because Yehuda, going back to the hand under the thigh, is where it was corrected, because this is what Abraham did. Put your hand under my thigh, do not take a wife from the Canaanites. So therefore, Yehuda was the original kingly line, but it had to start from David. So that's where David comes in very important to the genealogy.
So before David, there was nothing like kingship.
There were kings. There was Shaul, Saul. He was the first king. And so, but after David, there was plenty other kings. But before David, it was only one other king. Before that, Yahweh was king. And because of disgruntled Israelites, they wanted, king like other cultures. So Yahweh said, they're rejecting me from being king over them. So yeah, there was only one other king before David, but there was a whole bunch after David. But David is the start of the genealogy of kings, that is. Anything else? And that's a good question. Good question. All right. If not, then we can stop it. Praise Yahweh for the Torah, and as we have gone through everything today, we just say thank you for joining us today on this Sabbath day, and we encourage you to continue to read the Torah, continue to study the commandments, continue to read through this book of the covenants, and I guarantee you, as it says in Psalms 19:7, that the Torah is perfect and it brings back the being. So we like to say right here at the end, thank you for visiting us on another edition of Let's Talk Torah. Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Shalom, everyone. Have a wonderfully blessed rest of your Sabbath.